One of the things that's really beautiful about yoga is that it can accommodate just about everybody. There's something for everybody in the land of yoga. And, postural yoga practices of the standing poses and on vinyasa and all the asanas really is a product of the 1900s. Yoga before that was not nearly as physically inclined. And of course, since yoga was brought to the West, Americans and a lot of other people too have just kind of gathered it up and put it on the exercise train. But in reality, the practices of yoga, all the physical postures, were a very small piece of what yoga really is about. And the asanas, the postures, were given for support, that we are moving our bodies in certain ways so that we can be comfortable for sitting, for pranayama, for meditation, and get to a place where we're not completely distracted and uncomfortable by the physical form. So I think a lot has left in modern yoga practice, and it's turned into very much a physical exercise. But that's not where its roots really lie. And there's a new movement happening in the yoga realms now, to kind of return back to this state of grace that really is where its origins live. That we're trying to get comfortable in the body, and that's different for different people. Some people need to really work their bodies hard in order to kind of slough off the chitta vrittis, the mind chatter. People need to exercise to kind of quiet the mind. For other people, that can make the mind chatter up because suddenly the body's sore and uncomfortable, or the ego is attached to what I can and cannot do. So the most important thing in our asana practice, our physical practice, is to really think about, how is this practice serving me today? What is it that I need today? And everything should be modified according to that goal. So it's hard sometimes in a class. This is one of the beauties of online yoga, I think, is that you're by yourself practicing, even though you're with others. So you really get to not compare yourself. You can't see what other people are doing. So you get to not compare yourself to the person on the mat next to you. And it really takes some pressure out of the mind of what you can and can't do. So I'm hoping that you are starting to really listen to the inner body and follow what is there. So this concept of interoception, it's a word, kind of like a newish word, I think, but it really basically, it just means our ability to heighten our capacity for sensing the inner body. And this could mean all sorts of parts of the inner body, the emotional body, the spirit body, the physical body. But really from a physical perspective, it's in this moment, if what I'm doing right now, is it serving me the best that it can serve me? Am I moving toward greater capacity in my movement potential, or is something that I'm doing eventually going to create lesser capacity? And I think that happens a lot with injuries in yoga, repetitive injuries, where we tend to move quickly toward trying to get somewhere, not realizing that ultimately we are shrinking our capacity for movement in the long run by overdoing. So health can sometimes be defined as, do you have the most capacity for movement potential that you can have? And this doesn't come from just stretching. This doesn't come from just flexing and getting stronger. This comes from enhancing mobility, which is really a combination of being able to have length and strength in your muscles, but more importantly, being able to have a connection between the nervous system and the muscular system, the musculoskeletal system, as well as this deep quality of interoception. Is the movement pattern that I am experiencing right now serving me the best that it can be? So the piece of interoception I think yoga can really help with is those periods in our body, those places in our body that tend to have a lot of amnesia. Either we've been injured or traumatized in some place, or just patterned from movement throughout our life, that we are really, we've laid down strong tracks in one area, and we have like a total forest in the other area of our body that we have to bushwhack through. So interoception gives us this capacity to slow down and really try to train the parts of the body that are quiet, that are not as available to us, so that our movement potential expands, our mobility expands, and our functional strength expands, instead of just, I'm gonna, go lift some weights. Like, what does it really do for our functional strength when we're trying to pick up something heavy or reach for something from a shelf? So those are just things to think about in your practice. When it comes to a gentle practice, I think it's really important for us to start considering where our limitations lie and how to create the best movement potential we have in this moment today. So the last thing I want to say about it is, of course, we'll be moving a little slower and a little bit more gently today, but I also want you to consider, if something hurts, if you have an injury, and of course I can't see you, so this is hard for the teacher-student relationship, but if you find that a movement pattern is not working for you, first try a different vector of movement. So something as simple as, if bringing my arms out to the side is difficult for my shoulder, what does bringing them in front of me feel like? What does crossing them in front of me feel like? What does bringing my elbows up, like try different things so that you can get curious in your body of what does work, what pattern do I have that feels good and free. So the last thing I'll say, and then we'll get moving, is the Sthira Sukha Asanam, this sutra that is so deeply embedded in our asana practice. It just means, and it's one of the few sutras that really talk about the physical form of yoga. And it just means that our asana, our physical postures that we take, are meant to create steadiness and ease in the body. Sthira means steadfast or steadiness. Sukha means easy, sweet. So our postures should feel steady, steadfast, stable, and they should also feel free and easy and gentle in the body. So look toward those sensations in your interoception to cultivate steadiness and sweetness. And if you find those things with your breath, that is a beautiful asana practice. And it doesn't matter what your shape looks like. Your form is an internal experience. It is not an external striving of, I must look this way in this posture for it to be healthy or right. Healthy and right come from deep inside and very unique to each of us. So it's not something that we can look to the outside and say, I want to look like that, or I should look like that. So poses can look really weird and funky, and they're perfect. All right, so I want you to let go of the expectations about what you should or shouldn't be looking like. Okay, so close your eyes and let's just take a moment to check in. Maybe sitting is not comfortable for you. Perhaps you need to stand up and start your practice standing. Perhaps starting on your back would be more comfortable. So whatever choice you're making to go in and start your practice, close your eyes if you can and start to feel the breath. It's our primary gateway into interoception. If we're breathing, we're capable of sensing. If we hold our breath, we're denying sensation. So let's move into the breath, noticing what's here for you today. Is your breath choppy or smooth? Is it high or low? Is it tight or open? Is it short or fast? Is it long and smooth? What's happening for your breath? And there's no judgment around it, but only the experience of looking and observing into what's happening. So drop some weight into the lower body. Relax your face, relax your eyes, your jaw, all the places that you tend to creep some tension in. Let it dissipate out. Maybe your exhales can help with that. Let's place our palms together at our heart. Let's make a commitment to have the striving of our practice be toward interoception, the sensing of the inner body steady and easeful, instead of a striving toward outer perfection or even alignment. What is alignment? It's an inner steadiness. So let go of what that might look like from the outside and come into what that feels like from the inside. All right, let's come onto our back. Okay, so let's lie down. So when we start here, everybody, I'm sure, who is here has had some injuries. I think I know all of you have had some injuries. So let's just take a moment to let's scan the body. Let's just have a little self-compassion for the ways in which we have, kind of had to mend ourselves and nourish ourselves back to well-being in the past, and what kind of echoes live from age-old injuries or more recent injuries. And injuries can be not just physical, they can be emotional, mental, spiritual injuries as well. So let's just take a moment to scan from the top of our head down through our body. And as you notice places that have had, histories of trauma in your body, let's just take a moment to spread a healing balm over these places that you honor, respect, and give attention to these places. A sense of being seen. So scan from your crown, moving down through your skull, into your joints in your face, your ears, the base of your skull. Let's travel down the spine first. So just notice as you travel down the vertebrae, sensing either just in the mind or maybe you can actually feel in the body too. As you travel down, notice, is there anything hurting you today? Is there anything that has hurt you in the past that you need to care for? Is there tightness? Is there lack of mobility in some part of your body? Can you honor where you are right now as you travel down your spine all the way to your low back and to your sacrum, your pelvis, your tailbone? Take a deep breath, feeling the spaciousness in the inner body through your torso. Having some respect for your lungs, for your organs. Sensing into your viscera, and then anywhere you've had to do some mending in there as well. Let's move up into the shoulders and see through your ribs, collarbones, and out through your shoulders, down through your elbows, into your forearms and wrists, all the way to your hands, each finger. Just noticing, what are you observing? What are you sensing? What kind of history is here? Can you feed yourself compassionate presence into your own being? Is your breath with you? Let's travel downward again, moving down your spine into the pelvis. And scan through your sacroiliac joints, your hip joints. Sense into the deep organs inside your pelvis, your bladder. All of the movement that your pelvis does throughout the day. Can you sense any shifting that needs to happen to have ease? Let's walk down through the thighs, through the femur bones, into the knees. I bet just about everybody's had some knee issues in their life, so just go ahead and sense what's here today. What kind of echoes from the past are living in your knees. Let's travel through your shins all the way down into your ankles. The joints in your feet, the bones in your feet, the ligaments in your feet, all the way to your toes. All right, now let's take a big breath and feel yourself expand from your center out to your edges. And then exhale and bring your knees into your chest and give yourself a hug. All right, so let's just sway here left and right. You're starting to feel that a little subtle movement is so good for us. We have this capacity for lots of movement in our spine and our hips. So let's circle our knees a few times one direction and circle our knees a few times the opposite direction. And then depending on how your hips and knees are feeling, perhaps you need to hold behind your thigh instead of front of your shin. And let's draw the knee toward the chest, right knee toward the chest as the left leg stretches on the ground. And here's a good place to start experimenting with different vectors of movement. If you have trouble with your hip joint, maybe try kind of scooting out to the outer rim and coming in from an external place. Maybe come into an internal place and just see what kind of range of motion, where do you flex best in your hip joint? And if you get stuck somewhere along the way, can you just hang out in the place where you're able to be instead of pushing past your boundaries? Roll through your ankles and toes while you're here and just notice what's there as well. How are your feet feeling? Can you wiggle your toes well? Do your feet feel kind of like they move in one solid piece, or is there some capacity to articulate and move bones separately? All right, and then let's release. Bring that leg down onto the floor and change sides. Left knee, you can either hold the bottom of the knee at the shin or behind the thigh. And also with that right leg, I forgot to say this on the other side, you can put your right foot on the floor instead of your right leg straight on the ground. This can ease up a lot of range of motion for the pelvis and low back. So if that's a little bit more gentle for your body, that's great. Give a good squeeze and just see, where is my range of motion best? Experiment. Do I want to kind of roll out to the outer rim, come in through the side window into flexion? Do I want to come in more? You know, what kind of range of motion feels best in my hip and in my knee for today? Are your feet awake? All right, and then let's bring your right knee up. Once again, you can hold behind the knees or on top of the knees. And let's just find some circle motions here. They do not have to be full circles. Just get into the range of motion that your hips have. So let's explore. We have left and right matching each other now. So notice, is your range of motion different between your two sides? Do you have different sensation? Are there clicks or pops or snaps in one and not the other? Or do they happen in different locales in the range of motion? Just notice what's here. Come into whatever range of motion you have today. And then let's put our feet down onto the ground, wider than our hips. Arms can come out to the side or even up over your head if you want. And let's move our knees back and forth, windshield wipering left and right. So once again, this is a range of motion that you need to come into your range of motion and not anything past. So we're not looking to go into stretched rubber bands. You know, we don't want extreme movements. We want functional ranges of motion. So maybe your arms want to come up overhead as you stretch. Maybe they don't. Just see what's working in your body today. Where is your breath? Is it here with you? Is it starting to feel good? Are you loosening up your spine at all by moving left and right? All right, and then let's go ahead and relax. Stretch arms and legs out on the floor. Big starfish, navel to your edges.
let's give all your muscles a squeeze here. So take a deep breath in, hold your breath just for a moment if it's comfortable, and squeeze everything you can. Your face, your shoulders, your back, your glutes, your quads, your feet, your hands, everything. And then relax and bring your knees into your chest and rock around a little bit. Okay. Take a deep breath in here. As you exhale, curl your head up, round the spine, and then release your head back down. We're going to do that same breath holding on the exhale. Take a deep breath in, and as we exhale, bring up your chin, squeeze everything. Squeeze your feet, your face, your belly, everything you have access to. And then release the breath and go ahead and come back down onto the ground. Take your strap. I hope you have a strap. I'm going to tell you to grab something. So if you have a scarf or a belt, something, putting your right foot into the strap, interlace your hands behind your hamstring if you don't have a strap. So there's always ways to modify. The left foot can be on the floor or the left leg can lengthen on the ground. So you decide. So before we go anywhere, find your breath again. Sink deep into your interoception. Where is your capacity to feel? Are you relaxed? Do you have a sense of ease in the body, even as we're opening the hamstring? So even though the strap is on your foot, we're going to just flex and point the toes here. So toes pointing up toward the sky, toes pointing down toward the floor, just finding that range of motion, feeling the stretch through the front of your foot, through the calf, maybe all the way into the glutes. All right, let's take the strap into the right hand. The left knee can be bent or straight on the floor. We're going to open up the right leg out to the side, getting some opening through the hip flex or through the inner thighs. Extend through the spine and stretch through the big toe and the inner heel. Allow the left knee to fall out to the side if it's bent so you can kind of balance across the pelvis, finding your breath. All right, and then inhale and lift that leg up in the air. And this time you have to straighten your left leg on the floor so you can cross your right leg over. Try not to go really far. So we're not turning this into a giant spinal twist, just getting into the outer hip a little bit. Maybe your right hand wants to press the thigh bone away. Feel the length of the spine. Deepen your breath. All right, and then let's come back up. Now notice my knee is bent here. So you can do this with bent joints. No one said you have to have a super straight leg, or I'm saying you don't have to have a super straight leg to do any of these postures. So once again, we're trying to find our vectors of movement that work for us. Right foot is on the floor, left knee is into the chest, right leg can be on the ground or foot on the floor, whichever you decide. Bring the left leg up in the air. Make sure your shoulders are relaxed. So try not to yank your shoulders up off the floor, certainly not your head. And by the way, you can always put a blanket underneath your head if on the ground is not comfortable for you like this. So make sure you have a soft knee. It can be straight or bent, but just make sure that it's soft so you're not pushing the knee and hyperextending the knee. Feel your foot reach up, feel the hip reach down, feel the extension of the spine. And let's point and flex the toes here. Just kind of opening up the foot. A lot of people have some plantar fasciitis in the bottom of their foot. And, sometimes just getting some range of motion, loosening up that fascia in the bottom of your foot can be a good thing. All right, and then let's take the strap over into the left hand. Extend the spine and extend the leg. Your right foot can be bent and your knee can fall out, or your right leg can be straight on the floor. Try not to tip over to the left, somewhat stable. And this left knee, you can bend it a little bit. If you want to have it straight, that's great, but just make sure it's not hyper straight. You don't want a hyper mobile joint here. So remember, we're not trying to get to our extreme range of motion, whatever that looks like for you. You always want to back off your edge and take away that taut rubber band feeling in the body. Our breath doesn't travel well through tautness. And if we're trying to cultivate that easeful, yielding state in the body, taut muscles, taut ligaments, taut tendons really don't access prana in that way very well. So soften something up, breathe. All right, and then let's go ahead and bring that leg back up. We're going to take the strap into the right hand, cross the left leg over past the midline to the right, not very much. So you don't want to think about coming really far into a spinal twist. That's a really big movement in the spine. Left hand can take the hip crease and press it away. How is your foot in the air? Can you press through that? Is your spine long? Are you able to breathe? Is your knee soft? All right, then let's go ahead and come back out of there. Take your strap away for a moment. Bring the knees into the chest, and let's rock one more time. We're going to do one more starfish posture before coming on to our hands and feet. So open things up, stretch arms and legs, morning stretch. Exhale, knees in, chin up. And then roll over onto your side and come up onto your hands and your knees. All right, so come onto all fours, and let's take this opportunity to start exploring the movement of our spine. So cat-cows is really, truly one of our best friends, especially in the morning. So if you're stiff when you wake up, sometimes just getting out of bed and getting on the floor and just doing a couple of cat-cows before you even go anywhere can be a really great way of opening the body. So these movements can be very small. Your cat-cow can be a very little cat-cow, and as you warm up all the soft tissues in the body, maybe your cat-cow gets a little bit bigger. Another great way to do this in the morning, if you choose to come out of bed and get right on the floor and do a couple of rounds of this, is to curl the toes under so that you're also opening up the bottom of the feet. So feel free to do that now. Curl the toes under and go ahead and rock back and rock forth. So just see, this can be a very big thing to do, to put weight back down onto your feet, but just notice what's there. And only go to the place where your comfort lies. All right, and then let's come back to a cat-cow. Feet can go where you want them. Arching the back, rounding the spine. And then start to swivel things around. So maybe you like to do some circles with your pelvis. I think this is a really great thing to do if your low back or sacrum gets stiff. So imagine that your tailbone has a paintbrush attached to it and you're trying to draw big circles on the wall behind you. So if you're seeing what I'm doing, this kind of pelvic circles is very different than this kind of pelvic circles. Both are really good, and we will do both. But let's start with just the range of motion of the pelvis itself. Go the other direction. Paint some giant circles on the wall behind you. There's a lot of ligaments in your sacrum and in your low back. There's a whole lot of very tough and fibrous connective tissue that we want to loosen up very gently before we start doing some bigger movements. Okay, now let's do the circles the other way. So now I feel like we're changing weight into our hands and then back into our feet. So right knee, right hand, left knee, kind of moving circles like this. And this is a great way to start feeling, where do I weight bear and how do I weight bear? When I take weight into my hands, what happens in my shoulders and my elbows? Am I able to transmit that energy from the earth through my body? Let's go the other direction without locking out my joints. Are you breathing? All right, and then come to all fours and find that stability. How are your hands moving into earth? And maybe your hands are not comfortable here, in which case you can take fists onto the floor or forearms onto the floor. There's so many choices to ease up the burden of your body. We're going to do a little bit of bird dog. So from here, we're going to take our left leg straight back behind you, and you can be on forearms for this if your wrists have had enough. And you're going to take your opposite hand, so your right arm, your left leg and your right arm are extending. Find the sense of strength in the back of your body and in the front of your body. Wake up your glutes, all the muscles along your spine. Wake up the deep core. Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, hug your elbow and knee toward each other. Remember, this forearm, if it's on the ground, you can have a little less space under here. So just do what you can to find what you need to find. If you're on your forearm, your spine is actually going to tip because your pelvis is higher than your shoulder. So try not to dip, just find the line where it lives. Find your breath one more time. Let's hug your elbow and knee underneath you. And then inhale and bring it out. And let's place that hand or forearm down on the other side. Shake out your wrists if you want, if you have just a little bit of need for that. Remember, fists can come on the floor, hands or forearms. Let's change sides. Our right leg is straight back behind us. Once we find that stability, our left arm comes out. Maybe you need a different vector of movement for your shoulder. Maybe out to the side, or keeping your hand to your heart is better for you. Maybe swinging from the inside out like this, taking a range of motion like that is better for your shoulder. So you get to decide where you need to be. Maybe your hands need to be down on the ground. Find your breath, find your strength, front and back body. Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, elbow and knee come toward each other. Inhale, bring it out again. Find that extension. Exhale and draw it in. Feeling your core start to work a little bit. Let's take one more. I think we stayed on that other side a while because I was chatty. And then let's bring it out. Place your hands down onto the ground. Come down onto your forearms and come to lay down on your belly. Come into Sphinx pose. Find the chest opening. Shoulders move down away from the ears. Stretch your legs. Lift the navel. Lift the pubic bone toward the navel and stretch the tailbone toward your feet. What can you do to not kink up your low back? Can you engage your core and kind of airbag your core muscles against your spine to broaden your low back? And then exhale and release. Push back to all fours one more time. Inhale, reach the arm, left arm up in the air. Exhale and find a twist here. Twisting to the side. Take your hand onto the ground and you can push into it a little bit, but very gently. Whenever we're twisting, we don't want to rely on bones, pushing on bones, or putting weight into floor to make the twist happen. We want to rely on the breath to make a twist happen. So as you inhale, feel expanse, and then as you exhale, engage your obliques, twist to the side. And then come back up. And perhaps your shoulder doesn't like to lift up in the air like this, in which case, don't lift up your arm. You can just come down onto the second side without having to lift your arm first. Relax your eyes toward the floor. Make sure your neck is feeling nice and easy. Deep breaths into the back of the body. So are you noticing that when you come into these different places in the body, you're developing this quality of interoception, that our perception, our capacity to feel ourselves on the inside starts to become enhanced. And to me, this is one of the deep beauties and joys of a yoga practice is we befriend ourselves. We get to be inside ourselves, embodied. And this is a really beautiful thing, even when our embodiment includes pain. And then go ahead and come back up. Now, child's pose is not for everybody, but if it's for you, drop your hips down toward your feet. And if you need a modification of some kind, so if your hips don't go back like this, try coming forward and come onto your forearms and just move the pelvis back to wherever it can go. All right, so deep breaths here. Okay, we're gonna come to dog pose. Spread out the hands and the feet
If dog pose is not available to you, you can take your hands on, this is a very smushy piece of furniture. It would be better to be on a wall or a piece of furniture that's firm. You can take dog pose with your hands higher. So if you need a little less pressure, and this allows you to do a one-armed dog pose too. So if you do have an injury in a shoulder or you're just choosing to not bring your arms up overhead, it allows you to get all the spaciousness of dog pose without having to have weight bearing on the hands. So this is also a good choice if your wrists are problematic. So whatever you're doing, extend the spine, whether you're in full dog pose or half dog pose with your hands on furniture or a wall. Feel free to pedal your feet here a little bit. So dropping a heel, bending the opposite knee, finding that sense of openness through the legs. Your knees can bend a lot in this pose. Regardless of whether you're in dog pose or half dog pose, you can bend your knees to get more spaciousness in the spine. All right, and then walk your feet forward, come into Uttanasana. Blocks are so handy if you happen to have some. Being that we're going to probably be doing online yoga for a while, it's a really good idea to invest in some yoga props for your home practice if you don't have them. All right, so bend your knees, okay? Feel your spine. Lift the tailbone up. See if you can let the spine follow the tailbone. So you want to lift the tailbone and let the spine follow toward the floor. Relax your head. Bend your knees as much as you want. And wag your tail while you're here. Just go back and forth. Wag your head around, your shoulders, loosen things up. Inhale for a halfway lift. I like to put my hands on blocks. You can always put your hands on your thighs or your shins as well. Softness in the knees, spread out the bones of the feet. And then exhale, bend your knees and melt again. Push off your feet, rise up, lift your arms to the sky. Take a breath and then relax. If ever when you are down and you come up, it makes you dizzy, squeeze your hands into each other, squeeze your palms and tuck your chin. This will lift your blood pressure quickly. Okay, so it's just one subtle thing you can do to kind of manage some orthostatic hypotension if you tend to get low blood pressure when you stand up. Okay. All right, let's take a deep breath. Reach the arms, any vector of movement that feels good in your shoulders. Open, cactus. Exhale and round in like a standing cat-cow. One more time. And then exhale. Take your feet at least hip-width apart, maybe even wider, and we're gonna swing from left to right. Now you get to decide. If your shoulders don't like this, maybe take your hands lower. If your shoulders like this, maybe take your hands higher. You decide. We're just trying to get some range of motion, movement through our spine. Our spine works in so many beautiful ways, all this rotation and flexion and extension and combinations of them. So just see what it feels like to engage your core. Let your hips move with you. You can slow down, you can speed up, okay? Are you breathing? All right, and then find your way into stillness. So close your eyes for a moment and just feel Tadasana. Notice, how are you today? How are you feeling? A little bit looser? Is your body a little bit more mobile? Are you able to breathe? Can you feel that sense of yielding? So soften your knee joints. If you lock out your knees, you don't yield well. So yield into the earth. Give your feet over into the earth. Find that rebound through your body. See if you can root to rise. So as you yield down, it's almost like you're about to push yourself off, but not that extreme, just like a very inner, soft push off. So we're yielding to receive what the earth can give us back and let it travel all the way up through your crown. Try to be in this place where you feel movement of energy despite the fact that you're still. And lock out your knees for a minute. Push your pelvis forward. Lock your low back. Just notice, what have you lost? Have you lost your breath?
Have you lost your ability to feel this relationship with the earth? So find it again. Soft knees, the pelvis, the spine is over the pelvis instead of the pelvis pushing forward or shifting to the side. Deep bottomless breath. See if your breath can travel all the way to the pelvic floor. All right, we're going to come to stand up on our right foot and bring the left knee up in the air. Just a little bit of balance work. We're not going to go anywhere. If you want to go somewhere, you can. You can lift your arms, you can bring them out, you can bring a knee out, you can come into tree pose if you'd like. But you're also welcome to just stay right here. Focus on something that doesn't move and seek your yielding again. Can you find that sense that you have a relationship with the earth instead of pushing, just pushing? Do you have a yielding, a yield push instead of a push push? How's your breath with your balance? Try experimenting with your balance. If you feel very steady, look up. If you feel very steady, close your eyes until you really challenge your balance. Okay, and let's put that knee down, foot down onto the ground, and let's come to the second side. So whatever you did on the first side, you can do on this side. And you might feel that you're more or less balanced on this side. So detach yourself from results or expectations. Just come into the sensations of the body. So there's no judgment around, I have good balance, I have bad balance. There's just what is happening in your breath in this moment. Is your knee that you're standing on soft? Do you have it hyperextended? Can you loosen it a bit? Are your hips engaged? So you want some strength through your glutes to hold you here instead of just leaning out to the hip. Extend the spine, feel the bottom of your feet. If your balance is very solid, play. What can you do to mess with your balance a little bit? Maybe drop one ear toward a shoulder. Maybe do something different with your arms. Maybe pick your head up in different ways. Maybe close your eyes. All the while breathing, detaching from the results. So balance is best when we challenge it because that's what stimulates our capacity for good balance. And then go ahead and release. Like why? There's no point to just get really good at standing here. This is not a functional thing we do. What's functional is when we trip on the sidewalk, when we clip our foot on an edge of a tree branch or something, and we fly, and we have to figure out how to get ourselves back. So when we challenge our balance, when we go off kilter in the ways that we can, this gives us the capacity to find center again. If you never challenge it, you don't know where that center lies. Inhale, reach your arms up, any vector of movement for your shoulders. Exhale and bend your knees. Back is soft. Inhale for a halfway lift. Exhale and melt back down. Soft knees. Let's do that one more time. Inhale for a halfway lift. You can hold anything you want. Exhale and melt again. Let's step your front foot back, your right foot back. So your left foot is going to be forward. Your right foot is going to be back. Come to a lunge. Heart is expansive. Hands are on blocks if you have them. Square the hips as you drop your head down. Let's do it a couple of times. Inhale, bend your knee. Exhale, straighten your leg. Perhaps your back knee is on the floor here with some padding. So you need to find what's right for your body. If lunges don't work well for you, there's always ways to back off. Okay, let's put our knee down and we're going to rise up for a crescent lunge. Open the hip flexors. Once again, if this is too much flexion on your hip, perhaps for you, instead of being, for some people the knee down is more gentle and more supportive, but perhaps this creates way too much flexion for your hip. And you need to be up here where you have just a little less flexion in the hip joint. So experiment. Remember, this is your practice. And you get to do what feels right for your body. Maybe your arms don't want to be up. Maybe they want to be somewhere else. Find your breath. Okay, and then let's release the hands back onto blocks or the ground, whatever you have. Back foot comes forward. Inhale for a halfway lift. And let's step our left foot back. Our right foot is now forward. Find your lunge.
Blocks can stay underneath your hands. Let's move here. Square hips, bow in. Bend your knee, keep breathing. Just kind of going back and forth, whether or not your back knee needs to be on the floor. And remember, this front knee never needs to go straight. So when you come into this process of opening the hip flexors of the back and opening the hamstrings of the front, perhaps you're just in this range, just a little bit of a range. Remember, we're working with your mobility, your range of motion, not anybody else's. And now come into whatever your pose was on the other side. So maybe your knee is down, maybe your knee is up. Feel whatever capacity you have for opening the hip flexors and deeply flexing the joint, the hip joint. Reach and open up. Maybe your arms come up, maybe your arms come out, maybe your hands are to your heart. Whatever you're doing, extend the spine. Open your capacity for breathing. Find your stability. And let's release our hands down onto the ground. Walk your back foot forward and come on up. Okay, so we're going to turn sideways on the mat. 2 feet are pointing to the long edge of your mat to begin. We're going to come into a couple of standing poses very gently. So turn your right foot out and your left foot back. So a lot of times, these standing poses can be very difficult because we're trying to kind of, wishbone our hips a little bit. So I want you to play with just the right place. Nobody says your knee has to go over your ankle. Just play. Maybe your standing pose is right here where it's not very deep. See what it feels like to let this hip turn as much as you need to reduce that taut rubber band feeling, and then take the thigh bone back. So a little inner spiral of the femur bone, thigh bone moves back. Bring your arms wherever you want them to be. So the pose can be very high up here, with just the teeniest bit of bend in the knee. The pose can be very deep down here, with a very large bend in the knee. So you find what's right for your body. And if your hip has to turn a lot to reduce that feeling of tautness, make sure your torso is following your pelvis. So if your hips are fairly turned, and then you turn your arms back, you're actually torquing your spine. So have your sternum right over your pelvis. So if you had to turn your back hip in a little bit, your pose might look a little bit like this. And this is what I mean by lose the need for having things look like you've seen in Yoga Journal or whatever. This is not about what other people's poses looks like. It's what feels good in your body. Is your back knee hyperextended? Can you soften it just a little bit? Is that capacity for yielding there? Can you yield your feet and feel the rebound up through your body? How is your breath? All right, now let's come on out of there. Same pose, second side. So another thing that you can do is, so typically we have front heel and back arch lined up. Perhaps you want heel to heel lined up. If your pelvis is, your hips are a little tight, that might be a nice adjustment for you. Take your breath. Maybe your knee does not like bending very well. So you just do the teeniest little bit. So having any bend in the knee will help you externally rotate this hip, give you capacity for externally rotating the hip. So just find whatever you find. So your pose can be here, your pose can be much, much deeper. And there's no expectation of what's best. Maybe your shoulders don't like to be out. Maybe you want to flip your palms up. One thing I've been doing a lot lately, because my shoulder hurts a little bit, is taking my elbows down, but still holding my palms up and externally rotating my shoulders. So there's all sorts of choices. Experiment. If your hip is turning, make sure your torso is going with it. Find your breath. Unlock your back knee. Capacity to yield. So yield into the floor and feel the push back. Find your breath. Close your eyes if you can. Feel the pose on the inside. All right, let's go ahead and come on up. Let's turn back to the first side again. We're going to come into Parsva Konasana. So our elbow gets to come down on our knee now. And if that's too low, your hand can come down on your knee. If you do your hand, just make sure you're not hiking the shoulder up so you can have a little bend in the elbow. If your elbow's not making it all the way to the floor, still have shoulders down away from the ears. So whatever you're choosing to do, maybe this arm wants to come up, maybe it wants to stay down. Okay, so you be where you are. Once again, the pose does not have to be in deep flexion. It can be much higher. Your hip can turn. Take the thigh bone back. Soften the knee. Yield even weight in both your feet. Can you feel the external rotation of that front hip no matter how deep into the lunge you are going? How is your breath? All right, let's go ahead and push ourselves up. We're going to the other side. Okay, remember, heel, heel might be nice instead of front heel and back arch lining up. Find your breath. Maybe your hand is on your knee. Maybe you are much straighter in your knee. Maybe you are much deeper in your knee. It does not matter. Just make sure your shoulders are away from the ears, no matter what you're choosing. Your hands can stay. They don't have, your arm does not have to come up in the air. See if you can soften this knee and not let it hyperextend. Feel the yielding, just like we did in Tadasana. Can you yield push with your feet? Is your front hip externally rotated? Do you need to turn the pelvis a little bit? Finding your breath. Spread out the bones of your feet. All right, and then coming on up, turn your feet to the long edge. We're just going to stretch our hamstrings. So blocks can be really nice for this, to put some height underneath you. Whatever feels really good in your body. Okay, we're going to come into one more dog pose. So take your hands down onto the mat, feet back. If dog pose is not for you, half dog like we did before. Bend your knees as much as you want. Stay rooted through your palms and your feet. Deep breath here. Exhale out. Let's come bring our knees down onto the floor. Come to lay on your belly. Lie on your belly. Let's lift up into a very gentle cobra pose. Open your chest. Exhale and come back down. Come up onto all fours. One more swivel of some circles through your pelvis. Okay, and then we're going to come onto our back. Lie down. I'm just going to do a little bit of moving bridges. Okay, so close to, your heels are close to your pelvis. Bend your knees. And we're going to lift our arms up over our head as our pelvis lifts up in the air. Exhale and lower the pelvis down as the arms come down at your sides. So this movement does not have to be huge. You can just lift your pelvis a little bit off the floor. It doesn't have to be, a huge pose. Find your breath, root into your feet evenly. Okay, one last time. All right. Bring your legs straight on the floor. Arms are up overhead. Stretch the right side of your body. Stretch the left side of your body. Just enjoy some openness in the rims. And then release your arms down at your sides. Bend your knees again. We're going to come into reverse pigeon pose. So your right foot, I'm going to give you a couple choices. Your right foot can come onto your left knee, and you can reach back and grab behind your left thigh or the front of your left shin. You can also use a strap and wrap it around your hamstring so that you have a strap to hold. Another variation that you can do with this is to put your foot, I love this variation, is to put your foot against a wall or the couch or whatever you got, so that your arms don't have to do any of the work. Okay. If reverse pigeon pose is a little too much for your hip, cross your thigh like you're sitting with your legs crossed. So thigh over thigh, and we're going to reach and grab behind our legs or the front of the shins and draw your knees toward your chest. So you get to choose either of those two hip stretches right now, either reverse pigeon pose or thigh over thigh, kind of like Gomukhasana, so cow face pose legs, if you know that posture. Whatever you're doing, breathe your way here. All right, and then let's unwind. Stretch your legs out for a moment. And then we're going to come to the opposite side. So left foot on top of right knee and reach back behind your thigh or the front of your shin. Or take your thigh over your thigh and bring your knees up. You can always, if you're in reverse pigeon pose, you can always have your foot on a piece of furniture or a wall so that your upper body can be very relaxed in this pose. Enjoy. Notice how different your two hips are. So chances are one is very different from the other. Most of us don't have very much symmetry, especially if you've lived a few decades, right? You know, we've got histories in our body that sometimes are just preferences, movement pattern preferences that can show up in one side being a little looser and one side being a little tighter, or it could be injuries. Come out of the posture, and before Shavasana, just stretch your legs for a moment, loosen up your hips, and then we're going to take a simple twist. So feet on the ground, lift your hips and scooch them to the right, bring your knees up and drop them to the left. If the floor is too far away, a pillow or a block can go underneath your shins. Open up your breath. Turn your head if it's comfortable. If it's not comfortable, that's fine too. Inhale and lift the knees. Adjust the pelvis back to a neutral spine, and then lift the hips and move them left, knees close toward your chest, and drop them right. If you want to support underneath your shins with a block, you can. If you comfortably go to the floor, no need for a pillow or a blanket or a block. Take a deep breath. And then inhale and lift the legs up. And let's find our way into Shavasana. Now you might feel very comfortable lying flat on your back, and that may not be so good for your body. You might need to put a blanket or a pillow underneath your knees. Perhaps if you have a couch close by or a chair, this is a wonderful way of doing Shavasana, especially if your back tends to bother you a little bit. Having your calves up on kind of like halfway between leg up the wall pose and Shavasana can be very nice and soothing for your spine. So whatever it is that you need to come into deep rest. And as you find yourself finding the quiet place of Shavasana in your body, let's just take a moment to scan here, to notice if you've cultivated this sense of interoception, the ability to perceive your inner body, that sense of embodiment, that you are here in your body right now. That this moment is a mind-body experience, that you're not just
traveling in the thoughts, that your breath is traveling in the body. Can you rest your limbs and let them be heavy? Is your belly soft? Can you relax through your jaw and your eyes? Is there a sense of ease and steadiness? Do you feel free? Can you relax through your eyes and your jaw again? Letting your breath be the pathway that you experience yourself through. Let's begin to deepen our breathing again. Notice your body, be in your body. And once again, have some compassion and respect and care for the places that are a little vulnerable within us. Start to find a bit of movement. Eventually coming onto your side. Take your time. As you're ready, go ahead and push yourself up to sit. Find a comfortable seat, whatever that might be for you. Explore your breath. Notice if your body feels different than when you began. If your mind feels different, if you are more embodied, more here. Let's place our palms at our heart and offer our prayers, our energy, our intentions, our love. Just offer it outward. Namaste. I hope you all have a fabulous